So today, guys, on this fine Saturday evening, I have invited John Sneisen. He's the founder of the Economic Truth, also a podcast with the same name. He's a world-leading economic analyst, writer, and speaker, 2 times best-selling author and monetary history expert. He is also doing a podcast with Tim Picochet, the Liberty Advisor, and yeah, and we are doing this again because I failed to push record. So just gonna ask again the economic future 2 3 year forward. How do you see how are it's gonna shape and what's the biggest worries maybe?
Yeah, no, for sure. My biggest worries is the inflation that we have right now. And it's very troublesome because over half of the world's nations have 10% or more official inflation. Here in Canada, the official inflation is like 6-7% right now. But you go into the grocery store, your energy bill, car prices. I buy a lot of equipment for my regular daytime job that I have, and all of that is up anywhere from 30 to 100%. So their official inflation of 6%, it's total ludicrous. And I also see this in Europe, of course. I'm from Norway, so that's where I grew up 25 years of my life. And in Norway right now, it's actually officially been written in Norwegian newspapers that grocery prices are up anywhere from 30 to 60%. So compared to what you see the official rate is, it's total ludicrous. My biggest problem now with the economy is that yes, we have heavy inflation, and what that does too is a lot of the baby boomers that are out there that are retiring right now, they're starting to get into real serious trouble because what is happening is that they're losing money in the stock market. Bonds are not giving them enough return versus the inflation. So they're actually losing big time. They're losing, could lose anywhere from 25 to 50% now in the very short term right now. And so you're looking at that losing potentially 50% of your money that you were relying on to retire. That's going to be a very devastating blow to the generation that's our basically a lot of us parents, for guys in our age, maybe even your age as well. So that is not a good thing because they rely on that to, have a life after they retired. So now you lose 50%, you're kind of screwed. This has happened before, like Argentina in 1980s. I have a friend of mine that, his dad grew up there, and Argentina suddenly decided that they were going to do a reset of the monetary system. And so overnight, his dad, that had built up a substantial amount of savings, suddenly lost half of that purchasing power overnight. And so we could have events like that too, on top of the insanity right now in the financial markets. So we could see so much pressure everywhere downwards. But I think the central banks are going to come in and rescue the day again and print us into oblivion, making it even harder to live. On top of that, so I don't think they're going to give up the central banks and just raise interest rates to 20% or something like it was in the 80s. I think what's going to happen is that they're gonna, they've been racing now. You're starting to see everything come unglued. Stock markets, all the debt everywhere is starting to slowly collapse. And then as people, renew their term mortgages and all this stuff, like suddenly they're gonna pay like, 100, 200, 300% more on their interest payments, and so a lot of bankruptcies are coming. So there's going to be a huge pressure that's going to, the economy is going to go into a deep global recession, and then into probably a depression. But at that point, the central banks are going to come in, just completely panic, and then not just remember during their lockdowns, they drop money on us, like here's a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there. They're gonna come in, that was helicopter money, I like to call it. Now they're gonna come in with bomber money and maybe even nukes, monetary nukes. Like no pun intended with the war going on in Ukraine and between NATO and Russia, of course. But yeah, that's a little bit of what I think. But there's so much more to it. But I think that really is showing that we're entering a depressionary state of the economy, but the current system can't have that. So it needs full on, monetary spigots on again to print. And I have behind me here
Yeah,
a
I was
few.
about to ask about this money
Yeah,
you have on the
yeah.
wall.
So what I have here is actually examples of hyperinflations that happen where currency becomes completely worthless. I have the $100 trillion Zimbabwean bill from 2008. I got the 500 billion dinar bill from Yugoslavia from 1992. You got the 1 billion pengo from Hungary in 1940s, and then I have two right here, two. Venezuelan hyperinflation. One is the Bolívar's Fuerte, which collapsed in 2017, and then now you currently have the Bolívar's Soberano, which is actually collapsing as we speak. It's funny because this was the last currency. Like this one shows 1 million, but what they did after this one, they've issued now a what was it? I think it's a two a 2, 5, a 10, a 20, and a 50, and a 100 bill. But what they've done, instead of putting zeros behind it, they removed the zeros, but it's still a million in the currencies. That's the first time in history that actually a currency had removed zeros. And it's not working. People are not buying into it just because you remove zeros in Venezuela. So they had a hyperinflation in 2017. People are not trusting the government to keep the value of the currency, so it's happening over again. So now they have another hyperinflation just in 5 years of their collapse. And then I have lots of other ones. I think I collected 26 hyperinflationary currencies throughout like the near term history, not so much the long term, but near term. So this has been going on so many times, and it's happening again. We're in the cycle. A monetary cycle usually lasts like 40 to 60 years, and we're right at the end of it. And so that's why you see the big moves by China and Russia and India and all these trying to gang together, because they have a lot of gold that they hold as a collective, versus our central banks, like here in Canada and Norway, where I'm from, we have zero. The Finnish central bank has some gold, but again, they're very unprepared. Like we just are insanely indebted economies. Of course, Norway, where I'm from, is the second most indebted, privately indebted nation in the world. So I think the next one to go, actually, and this will be interesting for you to watch, that you live in Finland, right, in Helsinki.
Yeah,
So in Helsingfors, as the Swedes like to call it.
yeah.
But yeah, we should make some fun of the Swedes in this podcast. But I
I'm
think.
actually Swedish speaking Finn, so
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, Norwegians doesn't like Swedes, so I'm sorry. We're just gonna
yeah,
stop the podcast right now.
I know the banter between Sweden and Norway.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no. So I think Norway though is gonna be the next dominant to fall in Europe. Actually, people believe that it's others, but if you look at the similarities between Norway and Venezuela, with like being rich oil countries, they used to be very rich. In the 60s, Venezuela, they used to have um, a lot of wealth, and so they created a social welfare system in Venezuela, very heavy. And then, of course, over time they collapsed, because even though they had oil, and especially when oil dropped down to in 2018, it dropped drastically down. Venezuela went no, sorry, in 2016. Venezuela basically failed because they relied on oil money, and so does Norway to quite the extent. And so I think that Norway is at risk to become, the new Venezuela, because they have very similarities with their economies being oil rich, going into social welfare, and then collapsing because the oil prices went down. Now the oil price has been up, but Norway is trying to get rid of oil, and Jonas Gahr Støre, which is the current prime minister of Norway, he was furious at Elon Musk coming to Norway and saying that you guys need to keep pumping oil for the next 20, 30 years. So Norway wants to get rid of the only wealth they have, because in Norway we're not very good at innovating. The Finns and the Swedes are way better innovators than Norway. You guys got lots of corporations that are worldwide, versus Norway, which has very little compared to Sweden and Finland, of course.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that Norway is in big debt, because one would think the oil money had taken care of that, but maybe not. So yeah, you're muted.
Yeah, no, they're in big debt in the private sector, not so much in the government sector. The government has stayed a fair bit out, but now during COVID, when they locked everybody down, the actual debt to GDP. Let's go and take a look here quickly. Just give me 1 second. I'll look up Norway's Norway's numbers here, because in Norway right now, if we go and look at, let's see here, just 1 second, we're going to pull up the debt to GDP. Yeah, so the private debt to GDP in Norway, and that's the private sector, that's people's mortgages and so on. If we go and look at them versus, let's see here. Yeah, Norway's not number 2. Norway is number 3 now, because we actually dropped drastically because interest rates are going up and people are losing a lot of money. Then Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, then Canada, France, Switzerland, South Korea, Belgium, and so on. But let's go to, I'm going to go back here, and we're going to go and take a quick look at, we're going to go, let's see, GDP here. Government. Yeah, so sorry for just taking a little bit of time here. I just wanted to.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, we're just gonna look at government debt to GDP. Here we go. Yeah, so it actually in 2014 it was as low as 28.7%, but now during COVID it went all the way to 45.9. Now it's at 43.2. So it's basically almost like not quite doubled, but yeah, it's gone up
Close to
drastically.
double, yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole EU is doing the same, so I think we are keeping pace with them, I would think. We have taken some serious loans here in Finland, and I know all
Yeah.
the other European countries are doing the same. Trying to, at this moment, they're loaning to give the energy companies money. So they
Yeah.
don't, they put the roof on how much pay they can pay, and they pay the money that's left over. They need to pay the bills. So I don't think
Oh
it's
yeah.
gonna help anything in the long term, but short term.
Yeah, it's just a band-aid on a gashing wound, right? Like in Norway too, they have now massive a part of the economy. They're basically given, I think they're paying up to half or more of people's energy bills. Because in Norway they had a drought on top of everything, so their hydro rates are up, and then of course natural gas is up because the crisis between Russia and the Ukraine, of course. There's there's a lot of problems. I think like the whole energy problem could be solved very quickly if they let actually in Ukraine they Russia and Ukraine had a peace deal. Love or hate Russia or Ukraine or any of them, it's a lot of corruption in both countries. But they had a peace treaty brokered, and then of course Boris Johnson went over there and told them not to do it. And so, yeah, that's where we're at today. Like, thank Boris Johnson for, flying in there and telling them like, oh, no, don't make a peace treaty with the Russians, don't have sovereignty, we in Britain or in the European Union or NATO, we control what you have to say because you're a puppet, basically. So, yeah, and I don't know why they want to pick a fight. Of course, they hate Putin, of course, because he's a very totalitarian leader, of course. So they really wanted to cancel him, but you can't cancel Putin. Like for the idiots out there that think that you could just cancel Putin, like you canceled what's these actors, that are destroying women, right, and raping them and so on. You can't just cancel Putin like you can cancel what's his Kevin Spacey or something like that. So it's not the
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah, definitely not. And I have at my last workplace, I had a Russian woman working, so I've been keeping touch. And I asked yesterday how she feel about mobilizing the army and stuff like that, and she said no one wants war, but if we can't handle this, we need to destroy everyone that's against Mother Russia. She actually said that to me, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty harsh.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people like that, there's a lot of support in Russia for, and especially the old Soviet Empire. People, like that. They might want it back. A lot of Russians. Now I have a good friend that lives in Moscow right now, and I just chatted to him right as we before our podcast here, and he was saying that Right now, there's the 300,000 draft. Then that comes from like the government itself and their state-run media, and then the opposing media. Actually, they do have opposing media, not in Ukraine because they banned it, but in Russia they have opposing media, like the opposition or whatever, and they are saying 1 million. So like the people that are opposing Putin says 1 million, but Putin himself and his media says 300,000. So right now, like my friend, I think he's like late 20. No, he might be just in the 30s. But he is living in Moscow, and like I said to him, like hopefully, Moscow will be the last to be ransacked of fighting age men, because it's the hub. It's what really drives the Russian Empire, Moscow, right? So it's where they have all their technology and everything. Maybe St. Petersburg is kind of a part of that, but again, it's definitely common. He's a total anarcho-capitalist, so he hates hates the government, no matter what government it is. So he's not a part of that Russian, propagandized population, fortunately. And I'm sure there's a lot more other Russians that are not like that. But the problem is the general number of population is very supportive of what Putin is doing right now, and I think like the referendum, they're saying that the referendum, like this is coming from state Russian media that we are not allowed to see here, because we're not allowed to see what they have to say. So they are saying that the referendum results will be put in place on the 29th. So that might be the date that we will see the general mobilization, and then when that happens, those oblasts, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, which Crimea they already have, but then there's one more that I'm forgetting. People could probably know that, but those places potentially then becomes Russian soil if the referendum says yes, and so now Russia will defend it as it was a direct attack on Russian soil. So that's a huge difference between what you have now, where the Russians invaded it and then took it over, basically. And so now they will treat it as Russian, sovereign territory, and that is going to be a huge game changer. And I don't know if anybody really understands the ramifications of what is coming, and I'm really worried, especially when Finland and Sweden join NATO. I'm really worried that you know they don't like that. Of course, the Finns have been fighting off the Ruskies before, but I don't know if I want to face any crazy Russian military. I used to be up on the Russian-Norwegian border working for NATO there, doing intelligence. We basically spied on the Russians for NATO up there, and then this was, of course, during peaceful times, so it wasn't like we were just watching a whole bunch of drunk Russians running around on the military bases. And then, of course, they had their, they had more military up on the Kola Peninsula up north than all the military in Norway combined. So, yeah, basically what we were told when the Russians come, just bring out the waffle iron and the coffee. My colonel lieutenant told me. So
Yeah,
now, of course, yeah,
that's
go
an
ahead.
issue with both Norway and Sweden. Finland
Yeah,
has an army, and we have had standing army since, well, the beginning of Finland.
yeah,
But Sweden is trying now to recruit. The past 2 years or 3 years, I think they brought back the army and trying to recruit people, but they're not gonna have enough.
no,
And so it's basically us in Finland that's gonna stand on the border and hope NATO get here in time. It's
yeah, that's pretty scary, like it's and Finland of course has a massive border with Russia. Basically well, except for the Swedish part, but Finland is just like an
yeah,
insane.
the whole
Yeah.
right side of the country is bordered with
Yeah.
Russia. So
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's let's hope like better minds will prevail, but I don't know. I feel like these moronic leaders that we have right now that are adherent to the United Nations and to the World Economic Forum, they just want to get rid of anybody that stands in the way of their great green totalitarian dictatorship utopia that they want to in place. So uh, who knows? But like, are you going to try to take on Russia and China? Now, of course, China like we could talk about the World Economic Forum, their young global leaders, and they have so many Chinese there. I think they have like 400 or 500 Chinese that are members of that. And I laughed the last time I heard, it's like Klaus Schwab said, like, oh yeah, the Chinese didn't send anybody here, but meanwhile, they basically have, as a part of their program, a lot of people that sits in very high positions right now in the Chinese media, state, governments, and so on. Like Jack Ma was there. People that sits like that are anchors at the state-owned, several state-owned medias are there. People that sits in, CCP council are also young global leaders. So
Yeah, and
I don't know,
wasn't
like, yeah.
the Chinese president Xi Jinping, his name is right? He was the opener speaker in 2020 or 2019 when they had
Yeah, so
the summit.
yeah, so again, it's part like just because he's speaking there doesn't mean that they like him or not, right? But yeah, he definitely was there, and of course, they really align with the type of dictatorship that they currently have, the technocratic part of it in China right now. They might not totally agree on, basically what do you call it? Up in the with the Uyghurs there, what's going on? They're just murdering Uyghurs, Uyghur Muslims. But you know, when it comes to any totalitarian leadership, over time, when you vilify a certain part of the population enough, it's easier to just put them in a camp and kill them off, and the general population be like, okay, yeah, they were evil, you know. So,
It's
uh,
been done before in the history.
yeah, and it's just human psyche, and we can't really fix the way we're built unless we actually understand it.
Yeah.
So
Can I
it,
ask you one thing about the money before
please,
we move into the World
yeah,
Economic Forum?
yeah.
Because you told the country in the with the yellow money you have there, they took away the zeros. Can't the USA do that because they have the guns? Like if it really spirals and goes to have $1 million when you go and buy a loaf of bread, can't they with their guns go and say, "This is now $1 again, and if you say something, we will kill you."
Oh, they probably
That's the
could.
way they're doing it now. So I
Yeah.
think they would be able to do it. A small country can't do that. So
Well, they probably would try to. You got to remember in Zimbabwe, for example, in 2008, they trading in gold and silver was illegal by death. So you would get killed in 2008. Now they have another hyperinflation starting in Zimbabwe, and now they're telling people to buy gold. I guess they learned that just telling people that they would, end up in prison and be murdered by the government if they don't accept the currency, they'll they get killed. I don't think that would work, because why would you accept currency that would be worthless and can't buy you anything? The labor, and everything can't keep up with that, so you be dirt poor if you don't trade in others. So even though if we be at the barrel of a gun places, they can't control everybody. So again, I think that, yeah, they could probably do that, but again, I think it will fail, just because that you can't push a system that is completely flawed and failed and is worthless onto the public. Like actually, during the in 1776, during the war that the people had to free themselves from the Brits, they actually, George Washington said that if you don't accept, the greenback, you're unpatriotic. Basically, trying to, use the same kind of approach, not so much right at the barrel of a gun, but saying that you would be like a terrible person if you didn't accept the failing currency as well. And of course, that didn't happen. It just rapidly got destroyed right after they got their freedom from the Brits, of course. So again, any attempt of the state to actually shove something down people's throat, it'll work for a bit, but there's going to be severe resistance of people that be like, hey, I'm going to starve to death if you force me to do this. So I'd rather, instead of starving to death, I'm going to just, risk my life or whatever, right? To be able to survive. So yeah, again, I think that's what will happen. And yeah, it definitely could happen though, as you said. You know, they would definitely try and go to that kind of desperate measures to protect themselves. 100%.
Yeah. So that brings us into the World Economic Forum. And if we talk about money for a second before we look who is in there,
Yep.
the central bank digital currency they are pushing.
Hmm.
That would be one way to do it. They just push a coin out and they're going with, as I last read, with the Ripple. As I think the technology is built on the Ripple, as I understand it, digital currency. So I think they can, with that, can't they just say this is one Ripple and it's worth equal to $1,000? And
Um,
what can you
I
say about that?
I don't think Ripple is going to be directly being used. It's going to work in the background as the layer, like the Corda protocol that they use. It's basically going to be the layer that is being used in the background. It's not going to like it's going to still be a US dollar unit of a digital currency. Like FedNow, for example, in the US would just come out, and they're going to launch it mid next year in 2023, which is basically a preemptive push to start digitalizing, and it's a semi-central bank digital currency. What is happening there now? The thing is, we can learn even from history already with central bank digital currencies, because not all central bank digital currencies have succeeded. Now, the Chinese one is getting pushed on the public. Right now, the yuan that they have, their project over there. You got in Bahamas and several Caribbean islands. You got the sand dollar that's being used there right now, but it's like people are not adapting it at the pace that they want. So and there's actually failed central bank digital currency that already happened, and it was between 2014 to 18 in Ecuador. And it was interesting. It was kind of at the same time that the Ecuador got the IMF loan, and then suddenly they decided to just, hey, here's Assange, just take Assange now. So very interesting. But from 2014 to 2018, they had a central bank digital currency that they tried to push. Nobody adopted it, so they just shut it down in 2018. So if it's voluntary, 100%, it would completely fail right away, I think. So how can they be able to apply it then? Well, how about just crashing the whole world economy? And as we said, what my scenario that I'm worried about, well, how about you just lose 50 to 60% of your money? But, listen here, Ronnie, if you just come over to our new system, your $10,000 in wealth that you had, you can come over here, and you'll lose it if you stay in your old system, right? But if you come over here, we'll just grant you that money back. And that might be a way of tricking people as they destroy their wealth, to trick them into the new system, which is basically like there's two forms of central bank digital currencies that could happen. One is one run by the central bank. One is just a replica of the current system, which we still have the banking system that we have, but it's all digital. So when they remove the cash, cash is really the only last privacy we have right now left, other than, of course, some cryptocurrencies that are decentralized and private based. But other than that, like cash is really the only privacy we have left in our economies. Other than, even when you buy gold and silver, unless you trade it with others, you have to you have to be registered through what's called a KYC, know your client, and anti-money laundering. And that's how they track you. So really, just cash, taking money out of the bank. But that's why here in Canada right now, during the protests that we had in Ottawa, they basically implemented and let some of the emergency measures stay in. One of them is that anything over $1,000 has to be reported now. On any crypto exchange, by the way, over $1,000 has to be reported and under a KYC agreement, so they know exactly who you are, and that you traded that money. So there's ways around it still. I can go to an ATM, and I've done it, to take out $950 at a time. But you can only do a certain little amount of it. So it still doesn't work as well. But they actually have implemented, these capital controls, I like to call them, where you can transfer X amount of money, or you'll be tracked completely. So there's actually a book out there, and it's called The Curse of Cash by Kenneth Rogoff. It was written in 2016. He's former chief economist of the International Monetary Fund. But in that book, basically CBDC, that he didn't mention the name, that is just recent that CBDC has come up. It was called the cashless system, right? At the time he was talking, the two biggest things about a central bank digital currency or cashless system is to be able to get more taxes from the population and to basically know exactly what they're doing so they could give you money if you need it, and so on. If you had a central bank run system, the central bank basically, like it would be a crew of tens of thousands of people sitting there and be like, oh, Ronnie, he's running out of money. We're just going to give him a little bit more money here, or like he said something that we don't like, so we're just going to shut off his bank account and let him starve to death or come begging to us again to be a part of society. So there, that is the one, and then of course you could have the one with the current system. There is several like central bank digital currencies that are out there that could be used. Ripple is definitely one of them. They tried it here in Canada, and their project was called Project Jasper. So they had Ripple-based protocols here, and then you had actually they did the first ever central bank trade, central bank digital currency transaction happened between the Central Bank of Canada and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is their central bank. They in Singapore they actually used the Quorum blockchain, which is JP Morgan's blockchain, their own central bank digital currency platform that they're trying to push. But they actually made a transaction from the central bank through the whole banking system over to the banks in Singapore and then into the central bank. So it's been done, but that project, as far as I know, I talked to people that work with it in Canada here, and they said that, oh, they scrapped the Ripple project and they're working on another digital currency because they've been hiring here in Canada since 2018, hiring literally on the website of the like Bank of Canada. You could go and see under careers, they have been hiring tons of central bank digital currency people. So yeah, the push is coming soon, and I think a crisis would be the best way to do it. If you're thinking in a sinister way how to be able to force people into it, because if they try to do it voluntarily, I bet you it's going to fail miserably.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's optimistic if you look at that way, because I have the list of Finnish young global leaders here on my other screen, and even if Sanna, our prime minister, is going over to Davos and she agrees and she really wants to push the Davos agenda, when she comes back to Finland, she can't come out and say, this is the agenda and this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to destroy your life. Then after, when it's destroyed, we're going to push you in this direction, because then she's out of a job. And that's every country. And every political person wants to keep their job. So it makes it harder for them to actually implement it. They can talk all they want and agree, but to actually implement it on a country they are working for, I think that's the best, most optimistic thing I can think about, because they can't say what they're doing, so then it's harder to do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that, no matter what the agenda is, and of course the World Economic Forum is really like just under the United Nations agenda, the United Nations Agenda 2030. Where did that actually come from? That's also a thing to just let's just look at that. Where did Agenda 2030 and the ESG goals really come from? Actually, it comes from a Norwegian and from a Manitoban, which is hilarious. I'm a Norwegian living in Manitoba. It wasn't me though. I was too young. I would be 8 years old at the time that they did this, but it was basically a book almost that was launched, or paper that was launched, called Our Common Future by Gro Harlem Brundtland, former Labour Party Prime Minister of Norway. And she and Maurice Strong and a few others. So Maurice Strong is from Canada. He actually, the reason Maurice Strong is interesting because, we like to talk about conspiracy theories, but he worked at the time, before he became anything of famous, he worked at the time in the oil fields in Alberta at the time. And what was interesting is that a guy by the name of John D. Rockefeller bumped into him and liked him, and he actually hired him. If you go and look at Corbett Report and the history of oil, big oil, how they started the whole ESG movement, it's interesting because he said that, oh, you could just start this because of course Rockefeller was the oil baron, right? So he said that, hey, how about you just get in there and we start a environmental thing within the United Nations. So him and of course Gordon Bill and a few others, they wrote this document. Basically, it actually is. I talked to a friend of mine that's a bank manager. Like, he manages a huge portfolio of money. He left the bank actually now after the whole crisis. It started his own thing. But he told me that when he was in university, and he went to a very nice university, he was like, upper middle class. So he went there, and one of the books that they had to read was Our Common Future by Groland Britland and others. But that turned into what was called, and what it dictated at the time was basically government ownership of everything. So what happened then is that they got to the UN, with Maurice Strong and of course the push from Rockefeller and so on, and they created the Sustainable Development Movement. They had the first COP, one. I believe it's in the 90s, but in 1992, Norway had the first ever carbon tax implemented. And of course, what happened was that Our Common Future got created into a document by the United Nations called Agenda 21. And now, of course, it's Agenda 2030. So, and the ESG goals. So yeah, interesting how, these people are connected on, creating the whole thing. And then, of course, World Economic Forum has basically adopted that doctrine that is being pushed by the United Nations.
Yeah, do you think why we see this hard push now is because they had, as you said, in 1992, Rio de Janeiro or something, they had the
really.
meeting where they put the 21 goal and nothing really happened. So are they now, well, we tried the slow approach. Now we're going knife to the throat.
Yeah, I think it's all in. Like, you're talking about poker, I think they've gotten like they had to go all in because they're seeing too many cracks in their propaganda push. Too many people are pushing back. So yeah, they're just desperate, I think, and I think that's good. Them being desperate, because that means that they could potentially fail miserably, even though that it would really suck a certain period of time. I think people can fight back. Like here in Canada right now, they're doing the whole, like green. The fertilizer emission thing here. And one of my friends, he is the agricultural minister of the province, not the nation. So the local province, and so the federal minister, he went and met with all the agricultural minister of the provinces of Canada and the territories. And there's basically only three provinces that are pushing back. It's my local one here, Manitoba. Then you got Saskatchewan, which is our neighboring province, and the one just west of that again, which is Alberta. Those are the only three ministers that are really pushing back, and that's of course where most of the agricultural, agriculture is happening in our three provinces. So they're trying to push back, but he's saying like, yeah, they don't care. They're just going to roll over us and then implement the taxes because they can, and the regulation. Now
Yeah,
in
that's
Saskatchewan,
going to be
yeah.
super hard here in Finland because we are so proud of our self-sufficiency and we can make almost everything here in Finland that we need for food. So how are they gonna implement a strategy that goes against that right now and somehow try to say we have scarcity of food when we know we don't have it? It's just the government doing it in that case. So
Well, I guess
yeah,
the only way
it's
is to bankrupt the farmers. Like, look at like here in Canada, I talk to a lot of farmers, and some of them that are the big farmers, they're in extreme amount of debt, and if interest rates goes too much higher, they might just lose their whole farm, and then maybe good old Bill Gates comes in and snaps up a few acres of farm here and there in Canada as the farmers lose out, of course, because he is like the biggest owner in North America of farmland. So yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. Like I think they're just gonna so they're Marxists basically, and Bolsheviks. They need to destroy the system that we currently have to then rebuild their new. I think that's how insane they are. They're just going to destroy everything, try to destroy everything, and then they can build it in their new, utopian agenda, of course.
Yeah, they need to do it really fast, or else the
Oh
right
yeah.
nationalist parties are gonna rise up and take over 50% of the votes pretty soon, because they're growing in every country, at least
Oh,
here in Europe.
and here in Canada too. We just had a new leader of the Conservative Party here, which is funny. Like it's like, but he's semi-populist, and he is, taking over. He says, like, this is literally what he has said. I want to make Canada the freest country in the world. And when you say that on TV, mainstream media is going to come after you and try to destroy you completely. Now, they tried everything they could to destroy this guy. His name is Pierre Poilievre. He's not a leader of the Conservative Party. They tried to destroy him. Like, really, they said that, oh, his opponent, if you elect his opponent, he's more liked by the general voter out there. And he is actually, his name was Jean Charest, and he's a young global leader.
Well, of course.
Interestingly enough. But what's interesting with the thing that happened in Canada is that when Trudeau got voted in, it was the most ever a prime minister got voted for by a party. So what happens when they choose their leadership is the members of the party, so all paying members, it could be me as well, could then vote for a leader. And so what happened with Trudeau when he got in, he was the most voted on leader in Canadian history, and it was 100,000 plus votes that he got. Well, compare him to now Pierre Poilievre. He had 600,000 plus people that signed up as a member for the Conservative Party to vote for him. 600,000, and he won like 70% of the votes. It wasn't even close. And then there was like 7, 8 others that got like anywhere from 8 till whatever percent. So love him or I don't trust any politician personally, but he's definitely a figure that is he saw a pushback from Canadians, and he took it. He really took it. He's even been caught saying that they're going to get rid of anybody that is a part of World Economic Forum and is attached to it. They're not going to be allowed to be that if they want to be in Parliament in Canada anywhere. So yeah, if that's true or not, we'll see. But yeah, it's just saying stuff like that. Now he is a very charismatic guy. He reminds me kind of Obama back in the day when he got in. But Obama also said things like, "We're never going to bail out the banker. They're scum," and all this stuff. So yeah, politicians say a lot of things to get elected, but we'll only have to see over the next decades what happens with this whole thing. But there's definitely a pushback, and the general population is seeing and is pretty, like, you talk to people, most people are frustrated with everything, and they just want to live their lives. They're totally pissed off on the government of what they've done, and most people are actually supporting of the people that just chose not to take a vaccine, except if you were in the government organizations. Like here in Manitoba, we got like 60% works for the government, and so we had massive vaccination here. It was, I think they're up to 85% or something of the general population, and then almost 70% has been triple boosted. So I have family members here that were kind of mad at me, but now they kind of given up on it because they were nurses. They were, pushed the propaganda straight down their throat, basically. And what's hilarious, they just recently got COVID. They're all triple vaxxed, and they all got COVID. And what was funny though is they're talking about massive shortages in the healthcare system here. But you know how much they got off in time? They got 2 weeks, like 14 days off from like getting COVID, and you complain that it's a shortage of workers. Yeah, if some like, and everybody's getting COVID now. There's nobody not getting COVID, and I had it even. I just had it a few. Let's see now. It's like a month or so ago, and I had it. My wife had it. My wife, unfortunately, she got 2 jabs because she got forced to, or else she'd lose her job. But she's not taking a third. She's like, no, she's just not doing it. It's bad that she took 2, but at least, through me trying to just give her facts over time has finally worked, but But the propaganda was insane here. Like it was pushed left, right, and center. I'm pretty sure it was like that in Finland and everywhere else too. But here it was
Yeah,
just insane.
yeah, for sure. The nurses issue, they made it law here in Finland. If you are in a hospital, you need to
Oh
be
yeah,
vaccinated or you get
yeah,
fired.
same here too. Yeah,
And I actually talked to uh well, she is a bit outside the family but still in the family, and she's working as a nurse and she has also taken two, and she said she's not going for the third. So, and she's
yeah, there,
clinging to God, and I'm like, whatever floats your boat.
yeah, no,
I'm
exactly.
I'm not gonna question that. If you
Yeah,
stand with me, you can have God with your side or not.
yeah. Yeah, no, and you're seeing that. Look at what happened in Norway, for example. Norway got rid of any measures like 9 or 10 months ago. They completely removed everything, like no pressure for even third boosters or anything. Like they're still pushing it a little bit, but it's not a government thing anymore. The population just saw like everybody got sick, and like why the f would I take anything like this when it's just going to make me sick and there's a risk there. They had many people in Norway dying of heart attacks and so on. So yeah, like my mom was telling me how sick people have gotten from the third booster shot that they got, and both her and my brother took two boosters. No, took the two shots, but never the third one. But yeah, the propaganda was really hard. Luckily, I worked in a company here that were totally against it. We had like 70% of our employees were unvaxxed, and the other part kind of hated you almost. Like it was interesting. Uh, People here were saying that like, oh, these people shouldn't be allowed to do nothing. Like they're could kill others, because they're dirty people that won't take this vaccine. But we stood our ground and we kind of semi won. Who knows what the next move will be? But anyways, we semi won for now, anyways, on that side.
Yeah, yeah. I think the best example of how easy a government can lose is Denmark, because they're big
Yeah,
football fans. And Eriksen, I think the guy was, that collapsed and almost died on the soccer field.
that's right. Yeah.
And if you have a country that's always watching football and you see one of your favorite players falling down and dying in front of your eyes, you're going to question a few things.
Hmm.
And they
Yeah,
came
look what
out
happened there.
after that and just
Yeah,
said,
they had
get
massive
rid of it.
protests. Yeah, they had massive protests. You gotta remember, like in front of the Parliament building in Copenhagen, they had the people that was there until like we're not leaving until you stop this insanity. And of course, enough pressure. Look at what they stopped similar and done similar things to Norway. So it definitely works because like general population is not that stupid. We like to see, oh, we're like we know a lot more because we understand like the game plan and everything, but people are not that stupid. Like they see through things, but they don't want to speak about it because they're afraid of, repercussions, because they've been told in media that they are a minority if they think like that. But really, they probably are not even they probably are a majority of people when you think about it. So,
Yeah, I
but the
have a
propaganda is
Finnish guy now that he's calling me some evenings because he has been listening to my podcast and he's finally had someone to talk to, so he can ramble on for an hour. And I'm like, I need to go and take care of my kids.
yeah.
But I mean, it's fine. He can call me anytime, but I feel the pain when you have been looking into
Oh,
stuff and you don't know who to talk to, and every time you open your mouth, you have the one guy. Oh, you
yeah.
conspiracy nut job, and he just shits all over you, and at some point you stop talking, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course the push now for all misinformation, and even the UN has like a document on how to deal with conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists. So they're just coming after, but it's not a lot of people that are like that when we really think about it. So uh I think the great thing though is to have those communities around you with people that want to talk about these things. Like I have several groups on Telegram, including the Union of the Unwanted, but also many, many other groups that are popping up everywhere, of people that are, gathering together. We understand things and we talk about ideas and what we could do to more like not so much, like completely like create a new nation or anything, but having the connection of like living without needing, the central bank digital currency or a government to control us. So like more trying to live within our communities with being able to trade and do so on, because I think that's important over the next decades with the insanity of the push. Hopefully they completely miserably fail, which is a huge possibility, of course. But if they actually don't, then yeah, it's important to have those connections of like-minded people around us to be able to have that backup if we need it.
Yeah, for sure. I registered to the Freedom Cell website like a year ago. Then I think it was 3 people in Finland. I should go back and look how it's now in if I can find some like-minded people around me to try. I'm trying myself. I have had some potatoes and carrots and stuff in the ground this summer. Last maybe a month, if shit goes sideways. So I need more people around me. I need to learn how to
Yeah.
do stuff. But
Yeah, that's the thing. You just need to be more self-reliant. That's the key of anything today. Like, just it could be other things that could happen. We could have a solar flare, and in today's digital age, we're pretty screwed without power if we aren't a little bit prepared, at least, for stuff like that. So I'm all for, like, I always try to prepare as much as I can for the worst, and then really, really hope for the best.
yeah, that's the way
Yeah,
to do it. So I'm going
yeah.
to share. This is your site, right? You have made this.
Yeah, I put this together.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the Finnish young global leaders at the moment.
Yeah.
And this guy is a funny guy. Jorma
Jorma Ollela, right? Like, is
Yes,
that how you pronounce it?
it's Ollela.
Ollela. Yeah.
It's pretty fast, the Finnish language. But yeah, so that guy, he came in when the CEO of Nokia died. He came in, and he's
Ah.
also, I don't know if you have it up here, but I found him as an committee of 300 guy.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah, it might or might not be on there. Like, you could also search, like, under other positions. There's like bios there that you could also search on with keyword terms if you wanted to as well. So,
yeah,
like, if you wanted to look for like for Nokia or anything like that, you could just search by that in the whole thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first name I saw, and I was like, because me and my girlfriend sat down one evening and asked ourselves, what really happened to Nokia? And then we saw this guy came in, and he destroyed the company basically.
Yeah, exactly, because Nokia was massive. I had
Yeah.
tons of Nokia phones.
And then they
They were
brought
really good.
in a Microsoft guy that brought it even more down than Microsoft buys it. And we are like, there might be something
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course, it's a steering member at the Bilderberg Group, so that just tells you everything we need to know about him.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And this guy, Linus Torvalds, this is he's a Swedish-speaking Finn. So I think most of the Swedish-speaking Finns know him. And he is the father to the guy that made Linux, I think.
Oh, really, eh? Interesting.
So, and here we have Eva Biodet. She is the Swedish People's Party that most of my family is voting for, friends, because, yeah, well, they speak Swedish.
Oh,
People
yeah.
are simple. And I think most of the people in Finland know Jyrki Katainen. He's been a long time in politics. And this guy, Alexander Stubb, he was super popular when he was in the government because he speak, I think, 6 languages. So he was super good at international, like,
What is funny is, like, one of my middle names is Stub,
okay.
but no connection to him. I'm pretty sure, but it's writing it STUB is me, but STUBB also could be related. So who knows? But
Yeah,
yeah,
well, the world is a small place. So
yeah.
you never know. Then we have some professor, I don't know her. This guy, I don't know. I found yes, here. No, Nico Rosen. This is the race car driver. I was surprised to see this guy here.
Yeah, that's funny. You know, they have sports people in there. They have musicians in there. Like they have basically covered all bases. So yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, they're definitely in there. Some of them.
Yes, and of course, oh, he has a long bio. And this Annika Sarikko, she is at the moment handling the Finnish money. So
Oh, so she's exactly the same as our Christia Freeland, which is also a young global leader. So she's in the same exact position as her. Is she the same type of scumbag as our Christia Freeland is?
I must say I really don't know much about her.
Okay.
You see her sometimes come out and say the basic political bullshit and just go
Oh yeah.
back smirking in the shadows.
Oh yeah. Interesting. So she's not like Christia Freeland that loves all the spotlight.
No, we have this woman for that,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mrs. Sanna Marin, and her
Yeah, I seen
twerking
some. I
ass.
seen some. Yeah, I seen some things lately. Oh,
But yeah, so this is a great website for everyone to go and get familiar with.
yeah, and you could also download the X because the basis of that search there is a Excel spreadsheet. So if you go all the way down to the on that website itself, just yeah, scroll down like that all the way to the bottom, you actually find a downloadable version of the Excel spreadsheet as well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, right
here.
there. Yeah. So if people want that, like some people find it's easier. Like it's just like I tried to find the best way to do it, and this was the best free way to do it. You could do it probably a little bit better, but at least people can search on it easily, right? So it makes it a lot easier. But if you know how to use Excel as well, you could search there as well and find all these scumbags. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Like in Norway, for example, we have the richest guy in Norway. Recently, his name is Kjell Inge Røkke, and he actually just moved to Switzerland because of tax reasons
Of
to hang out
course.
with Klaus and his good friends up in the mountains there. So yeah, it was hilarious. I thought, oh yeah, he's going to hang out with Klaus now, and they're gonna be scheming and planning, of course. Those two, and what's interesting too is that the second in command at the World Economic Forum, he is a Norwegian, Børge Brende from. And you know what's funny? All these globalist scumbags from Norway, they all come from the Labour Party of Norway. Like 95% of them, they're all like Labour Party people. Like look at Jens Stoltenberg, right? The head of NATO.
Yeah,
He's
is
a
that
prime
why
minister.
if you're in the Labour Party, you're more inclined to become communist or
Well, yeah, well, they align with the agenda, right? Like they align with collectivism, which is a part of like the group think, right? Like you have groups, like it's for the greater good of everybody. I'm more for like let's just have for the greater good of the individual, and when you do that, I'm pretty sure we'll all be fine. It's just like the worry is that then you can't control people when they're individual thinkers. It's a lot harder. So yeah, but I think yeah, definitely that's why because you see in a lot of other nations too, most of them are aligned with kind of left-leaning policies and so on and left parties if they're politicians. So yeah.
yeah, for sure. And that's been imprinted, the greater good has been imprinted in at least here in Europe as long as I've been alive. So when you talk about individual people and how they should be able to make decisions for themselves, it's really hard. People are
Oh yeah.
really against it. They're like, but if you're selfish, you're
Yeah,
just
exactly.
selfish. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Not well, maybe I am, but I still have the option to do it."
Well, the thing is, like, they say it's selfish, but really, personal interest doesn't mean that you will want to destroy everything around you. Like, why would I do that? My personal interest in to have a best life possible. It's like, why the heck would I want others to be miserable around me? Like, it's just a stupid idea, like what they try to, use. But it's you got to remember, like, we're kind of hardwired that way as human beings because we when we were whatever we were back in the day, if it's true or not, the whole Darwinian theories and who knows what is really true about our past, but we really were, groups. Like monkeys are groups. They still actually go to war and kill each other, murder each other, the same as humans. So when you look at the bottom of it, we're still like monkeys when it comes to our innate actions, and that's what they want us to be. They don't want us to be enlightened beings that can think for ourselves, kind of thing. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
that's gonna take a big shift in how people think and how we act,
yeah,
because you can have people that are selfish and destroys everything around them, but you need to have compassion still, but still think about yourself and not.
yeah,
It's like the when you fly. If you are gonna crash, you're gonna, well, you die anyways, but put on the mask on yourself before start helping
yeah.
the guy next to you. So
No, yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and like in Norway as well. Like Norway actually used to, like before, like after the war in Norway, like World War II, really, like Norway used to be very conservative and individual thinking. It's not until late that Norway, when they got the oil and everything and all the riches, that we became leaning that way. But when you go and look at any empire or any civilization throughout history, they go through those phases where they're individualist thinking, small governments. They're all like discovering and trying to set up a new civilization, and then they create systems of money and economics, and then they build that up, and you get to a point where you start lending money and you create social programs, and everything is great until you basically have printed too much money and created too much money, and if you have a debt-based system, you just have made too much money into existence that everybody's indebted. Nobody could ever pay that off. And so what happens is you just start to become decadent. You have, like, look at all the programs, our football, as we call it in Europe, or soccer that they like to call it here, or the American football, or in Canada it's the hockey. Like the great breads, no, the circuses, and then of course now we have the breads. Like especially during COVID, everybody got free money, and so after that, you have like, well, we're kind of in it now. We're of an age of decadence. Everybody's feeling kind of rich, and then so what is happening? Everybody's spending money and living great lives and so on, and then it starts to trickle into becoming more like the population almost becomes mentally ill in certain aspects. Like we're seeing a lot of that craziness, be out in the world right now, where you have the push for pedophiles, being looked upon as good people, and like criminals that have murdered thousands of people, for example. Like, oh yeah, they're good people at the bottom, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
misunderstood people.
Yeah, exactly. So those things, it's just a natural outcome of civilization. But the problem is that's on the backside of a civilization. So we're kind of like, now civilization is moving into a period of collapse, basically, which I don't like. Like we're you and me, we're alive. Like I don't know how old are you? I
I'm
haven't asked you.
31, 31.
Yeah, so you're 31, I'm 38. So like we're basically gonna have to live through this craziness.
Yeah, we
uh,
don't have
yeah.
much of a choice.
No, and I don't want to kill myself. So unless somebody tries to come in there and do it. So yeah, I definitely want to be alive, and but we just gotta have to make the best of it and try to push back as good as we can, and educate people. I think that's the only way we could do turn things around. Like it probably will suck, but then we could create a newer type of civilization on the back, and that for you have kids, you said, right? So you
Yeah.
want to yeah, you want to create a better world for the kids instead of living in a totalitarian a utopia. Maybe we should have individual freedom and be free to create great things in our lives for ourselves, but not having somebody tells us what to do. So that's, I don't have any kids, but I want that for generations after me. So it's all that Elon Musk long-term thinking of the species. How are we gonna survive? Should we self-destruct in totalitarian regime, or should we try to work together and get rid of these institutions that are prohibiting us from working together as Finns and Russians and Norwegians and Iranians and Saudi Arabians and Canadians, like as people that just wants the better for the world, and we can make that happen even if we take care of ourselves first.
Yeah, for sure. And on that note, I think it's a good place to call it. for this time. This was fantastic. You're so full of knowledge. I could listen to you go on and on for hours, but it's getting late. So thank you for coming and promote everything you want to promote. Links, websites, podcasts,
Yeah, no, for
anything.
sure. It's super easy to find me, theeconomictruth.org. And then you could go and search me up on Odyssey at the Economic Truth Report there. That's two ways to find me. You can find my books on Amazon under my name. But go to my website, you'll find everything there. I got links to everything that I do there. So that's the best way to find me. And of course, take a look at the younggloballeaders.club website and do some research there, because it might be in your local community some people that are scheming to destroy your local community.
For sure. Yeah, I'm gonna bring up this website to everybody I know, have them look at it. People need to know about it.
Yeah.
So thank you. Have a great day. I guess it's over there still.
Yeah, it's still like 1:15 or so. I know it's I think you're what is it, 7 or 8 hours?
It's 10 minutes over 9 o'clock here. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so well, you have a good evening. It was fantastic talking to you, Ronnie, and hopefully we can talk again.
yeah, for sure, for sure. See you later.
Yeah, have a great one.